Why was she always the last one briefed? She stood in the corner of the operations tent, arms crossed, watching the men gather around the digital map like it was a campfire. Captain Riley Martinez had been on overwatch duty for 3 deployments now. 3 deployments of sitting on mountains while teams went in. 3 deployments of being the eyes no one trusted until something went wrong. The briefing officer pointed at the terrain model. Extraction point here. Intelligence says light resistance. In and out 30 minutes max. Riley studied the topography from her position. The valley was a kill box, steep ridges on 3 sides, 1 exit. She'd seen this setup before in Helmand Province. It hadn't ended well. She raised her hand. The room didn't notice. She cleared her throat. Sir, that valley. Captain Martinez. The briefing officer didn't look up. Your sector assignment is grid November 7. You'll have eyes on the southern approach. I understand, sir, but the terrain. Your job is observation, Captain. We've got this handled. The SEAL team leader, Lieutenant Commander Briggs, glanced at her. Just for a second, something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance. Maybe. Or maybe just the same thing she'd seen in 100 briefing rooms. The look that said, contractors don't get a vote. She had stopped being active duty 2 years ago. Medical discharge after an IED took most of her left calf. They rebuilt it with titanium and physical therapy, but the Army decided she wasn't combat effective anymore. So she became a contractor. Same job, less respect, half the pay. Riley left the tent without another word. Outside, the Afghan sun hammered down like divine punishment. She walked toward the equipment cage where her gear waited. Her rifle case lay against the chain-link fence. Custom build. Remington 700 with a .300 Winchester Magnum barrel she'd spent 6 months getting perfect. The scope was calibrated to her breathing, her heartbeat, the way her finger touched the trigger. At 1,000 yards, she could put 5 rounds through a dinner plate. At 1,400, she could still make the shot that mattered. She'd done it 17 times. 17 confirmed kills. 17 men who would have killed American soldiers if she hadn't been faster, calmer, better. Nobody in that briefing tent knew those numbers. They only knew she wasn't active duty anymore. Wasn't one of them. A voice called from behind, Martinez. She turned. Lieutenant Commander Briggs walked toward her, sunglasses reflecting the desert glare. Sir. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to talk quietly, far enough to maintain the distance officers kept from contractors. You were going to say something about the valley. She hesitated, then, it's a funnel, sir. One way in, one way out. If anyone's waiting, you'll be boxed in with nowhere to go. Briggs nodded slowly. Intelligence says the compound is lightly defended. Intelligence also said that village in Kunar was empty. My team lost 4 guys finding out it wasn't. Something shifted in his expression, not quite respect, but acknowledgement. You were there, Kunar 2019. Yes, sir. He studied her for a long moment. Then you know why we have to trust the intelligence we're given. I also know why we shouldn't trust it blindly. Briggs almost smiled, almost. Your overwatch position, you'll have eyes on the whole valley. Every inch, sir. Good. He turned to leave, then paused. If things go sideways, you make the calls, not me, not command you. Riley felt something loosen in her chest. Not trust, not yet, but a door opening just a crack. Understood, sir. He walked away without another word. She spent the next 6 hours prepping, checking gear, loading magazines, calculating wind drift at different elevations. The mission brief said insertion at 2100 hours. That gave her until 1800 to be in position. The mountain was 3 miles from base. She could walk it in 90 minutes with full gear. She gave herself 2 hours. By the time she reached the hide site, the sun was dropping toward the western peaks. She'd chosen the position 2 days earlier during reconnaissance. a natural depression in the rock face, 2,200 feet above the valley floor. It gave her clear sightlines to the compound and the entire approach route. She dug in carefully, spread her ghillie net, arranged rocks to break up her silhouette, settled behind the rifle and became part of the mountain. The temperature dropped as darkness came. The wind shifted from south to east, cold and steady. She adjusted her scope settings, checked the range card she'd made, every landmark measured, every distance memorized. At 20:45 hours, the radio crackled. "Overwatch, this is Dagger 1, radio check." Riley keyed her mic. "Dagger 1 Overwatch, read you Lima Charlie." "Copy, insertion in 15 mics." "Standing by." She watched through the scope as the valley filled with shadows. The compound sat quiet, small building, 2 vehicles, security lights around the perimeter. Too quiet, she thought. Her instincts were screaming, but instincts weren't evidence. They weren't something you could put in a report. They were just the accumulated weight of experience, the pattern recognition built from 1,000 observations, the way a dog knows a storm is coming before the sky changes. She keyed the mic again. "Dagger 1 Overwatch, compound appears quiet, no movement detected." "Copy, proceeding as planned." The helicopters came in low and fast, black shapes against the darker sky. They dropped the team a mile from the target and disappeared into the night. Riley watched the SEAL team move through her scope, 12 figures advancing in tactical formation, professional, disciplined, everything by the book. But the valley still felt wrong. She panned across the ridgelines. Thermal scope showed nothing, just rocks and cold wind. The team reached the compound perimeter, breached the gate, moved toward the main building. Riley's finger rested along the trigger guard. Not on the trigger, never on the trigger until you're ready to kill. Then she saw it. A heat signature, barely visible, on the northern ridge 800 yards from the SEAL position. She dialed in the magnification. A man lying prone, rifle in hand. Her heartbeat slowed, her breath steadied. "Dagger 1 Overwatch, I have eyes on a hostile, northern ridge, 800 yards from your position." "Copy, taking cover." She watched as more signatures appeared, 1 on the eastern ridge, 2 on the western. They'd been there the whole time, waiting, hidden under thermal blankets until the moment to spring the trap. "Dagger 1, you have multiple hostiles on the ridgelines. This is an ambush. Say again, ambush." Briggs's voice came through sharp and clear. "Overwatch, can you engage?" Riley's training said, "Observe and report." Her orders said, "Do not engage without authorization from command." But Briggs had given her authority, and 17 men were about to die if she didn't act. "Engaging." She centered the crosshairs on the northern target, calculated wind drift, elevation. The bullet would drop 11 feet over 800 yards. She adjusted half a mil dot. Breathed in, breathed out. Squeezed. The rifle bucked. The suppressor absorbed most of the sound. Through the scope, she watched the target drop. She chambered another round, found the eastern hostile, fired. The valley erupted. Muzzle flashes lit up the ridgelines as the ambush realized they'd been compromised. Automatic weapons fire tore through the darkness. The SEAL team returned fire, but they were caught in the open, exposed, pinned down from 3 directions. Riley's world narrowed to the scope. Target, breathe, fire, target, breathe, fire. Western ridge, down. Northern ridge, second shooter, down. Eastern ridge, down. Her mind went quiet. No fear, no doubt, just the mechanical rhythm of the shot, the way she'd trained 10,000 times. The radio screamed with voices. "We're pinned, we need support." "Taking casualties." "Where the hell is that fire coming from?" Briggs's voice cut through. "Overwatch is engaging, hold position." Riley shifted to the southern ridge. 2 more targets, both firing down at the SEAL team. She took the first, adjusted, took the second. But more were appearing. They'd walked into a force 3 times larger than intelligence reported. Her hands moved automatically. Reload, chamber, find target, fire. 10 shots, 10 targets down. But it wasn't enough. The SEAL team was still pinned, still taking fire from positions she couldn't see. Then she heard it, the sound that changed everything. "Save us," someone screamed across the radio, raw and desperate. "Overwatch, save us." Riley's heart clenched, not from fear, from the sudden, terrible clarity of what this moment demanded. She couldn't save them all from here. She couldn't see every angle, couldn't reach every shooter. But she could do something else. Something crazy. Something that violated every rule of Overwatch doctrine. She could become the target. What makes a person step into fire when every instinct screams to hide? Riley broke down her rifle, packed it, grabbed her secondary weapon, an M4 carbine she'd almost left behind, started moving down the mountain at a dead run. The terrain was treacherous in the dark, loose scree, hidden gaps. One wrong step and she'd tumble 2,000 feet to the rocks below. She didn't slow down. Her prosthetic leg screamed with each impact. The titanium rod that replaced her calf bone absorbed shock differently than flesh. It created pressure points, hot spots that would become blisters and then open wounds. She ignored it. The radio was chaos, voices overlapping, someone calling for medevac, someone else reporting ammo running low. She keyed her mic while running. "Dagger 1, Overwatch is moving to support, 5 minutes. "Negative," Briggs shouted. "Stay in position, that's an order." "Can't follow that order, sir. You need someone on their flank." She cut the radio before he could respond. 3 minutes down the mountain, her lungs burned. Her leg felt like it was being torn apart at the socket. She could see the muzzle flashes now, hear the staccato crack of gunfire echoing across the valley. 2 minutes. She reached the valley floor, changed direction, circled east to approach the enemy from behind. 1 minute, she slowed, controlled her breathing, switched the M4 to semi-automatic. The northern ridge position was 50 yards ahead, 2 shooters firing down at the pinned SEAL team. Riley moved like smoke, every step deliberate, every motion calculated. 20 yards, the shooters were focused downrange, focused on the men they were trying to kill. 10 yards, she raised the M4, centered on the first target. Fired twice, the man dropped. The second shooter spun, his rifle came around. Riley fired first, center mass, he fell backward. She moved immediately. Never stay in the same spot after shooting. Keep moving, stay unpredictable. The eastern ridge was next, 3 shooters, better position, better cover. She worked her way along the base of the ridge, found a gap in the rocks, climbed. 70 feet up, she reached a ledge that put her level with the enemy position. They were 30 yards to her left, still focused on the valley, still unaware. Riley settled against the rock face, braced the M4, took the first shooter. The second one realized what was happening, turned toward her. She shot him before he could shout a warning. The third was faster, his rifle barked, rounds chipped the rock near her head. Riley dropped flat, crawled 3 feet left, rose up, found him in her sights. Fired. The ridge went quiet. Her radio crackled, Briggs's voice. "Overwatch sitrep. 3 positions neutralized, moving to your location." "Negative, we're pulling back to extraction point, meet us there." Riley checked her ammunition, 2 magazines left, maybe 60 rounds total. She started moving toward the extraction point. The valley stretched dark and deadly ahead. That's when she heard the voice. Young, terrified, barely above a whisper. "Help, somebody help." She froze. The voice was coming from below, down in the valley, off the main path. The SEAL team was already moving toward extraction. They couldn't hear it, didn't know. Riley keyed her mic. Dagger 1, I have a man down in the valley, south side, near the dried riverbed. Overwatch, we have one missing, Corporal Vance. Lost him during initial contact. The voice called again, weaker this time, please. Riley changed direction, moved toward the sound. She found him wedged between two boulders. Blood soaked his left leg. A tourniquet was twisted above the knee, but it wasn't tight enough. He was still bleeding. He looked up at her with eyes that had already accepted death. I tried to call for help, he whispered. Radio's broken. Riley knelt beside him, assessed the wound. Femoral artery compromised. He'd been bleeding for at least 20 minutes. She had maybe 5 minutes to save his life, maybe less. What's your name? Vance, Michael Vance. Okay, Michael, I'm Captain Martinez. I'm going to fix your leg. It's going to hurt like hell, but you're going to live. She tightened the tourniquet properly, packed the wound with gauze from her kit. His face went white. He bit down on his glove to keep from screaming. Good, she said. Stay with me. The radio crackled. Overwatch extraction bird is inbound, 2 minutes. Copy, I've got Corporal Vance. We're coming. She hauled him up, got his arm across her shoulders, started moving. He weighed 190 pounds. Her prosthetic leg wasn't designed for this kind of load. She moved anyway. 50 yards. The helicopter appeared over the ridge, searchlight cutting through the darkness. 30 yards. Vance's weight pulled at her shoulder, her leg buckled. She caught herself, kept moving. 10 yards. Briggs appeared out of the darkness, grabbed Vance's other side. I gave you an order, he said. I know, Riley replied. They reached the helicopter, loaded Vance. The rest of the team piled in. Riley climbed aboard last. The helicopter lifted off. Bullets pinged against the hull. Then they were climbing, turning, racing away from the valley. She collapsed against the bulkhead. Her prosthetic leg was twisted wrong. The socket had cracked. Blood seeped through her pant leg where the broken plastic had cut into her skin. Briggs sat beside her, didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, command is going to want a full debrief. I'm sure they will. They're going to ask why you disobeyed orders. Riley looked at Corporal Vance. Medics were working on him. IV line in, pressure on the wound, he'd live. I'll tell them the truth, she said. Following orders would have gotten 12 men killed. Briggs nodded slowly. Yeah, it would have. He reached into his vest, pulled out something small, held it out to her. A SEAL team patch, trident in gold, the kind they only gave to people who earned it. You're one of us now, he said, like it or not. Riley took the patch, felt the weight of it in her hand, heavier than fabric should be. Thank you, sir. The helicopter banked south, toward base, toward safety, toward whatever came next. Outside the window, the mountain disappeared into darkness, but Riley didn't look back. She'd spent too much time on mountains, too much time alone, too much time being the person nobody trusted until everything went wrong. Maybe she thought that was finally changing. How do you explain a miracle to people who don't believe in them? The debriefing lasted 4 hours. Riley sat in a folding chair facing 3 officers and a civilian intelligence analyst. They asked the same questions 20 different ways. Why did you abandon your Overwatch position? Why did you engage without authorization from command? Why did you disobey a direct order from Lieutenant Commander Briggs? She answered each question the same way, calmly, factually, without emotion. Because 12 men would have died if I hadn't. Because the intelligence was wrong and someone had to adapt. Because Briggs gave me tactical authority and I used it. The senior officer, a colonel with a chest full of ribbons and eyes that had seen too much, leaned forward. Captain Martinez, you understand that your actions violated multiple protocols. You abandoned your assigned position. You engaged targets without proper authorization. You disobeyed a direct order. Yes, sir. You also understand that 12 Navy SEALs are alive because of those exact decisions. Riley didn't answer. The question didn't need one. The colonel glanced at the others. Some silent communication passed between them. You're dismissed, Captain. We'll be in touch. Riley stood, saluted, left the room. Outside, the Afghan sun was just rising, pink and gold across the eastern mountains, beautiful and indifferent. She limped toward the medical tent. Her prosthetic needed adjustment. The socket had cracked during the extraction. Every step sent sharp pain up her residual limb. Martinez. She turned. Briggs was jogging toward her. How'd the debrief go? Hard to say. They didn't court-martial me on the spot, so that's something. Briggs smiled, actually smiled. They won't. I already submitted my report, made it very clear that you saved my team's lives, made it very clear that I authorized your actions. You didn't, though, not really. I gave you tactical authority, the rest is interpretation. He paused. My men want to buy you a drink. Well, a bottle of near beer since we're in a dry zone, but the sentiment counts. Riley felt something unfamiliar. It took her a moment to recognize it. Belonging. Tell them I'll take a rain check after I get my leg fixed. That bad? Socket cracked, cut into my stump pretty good. Briggs winced. Medical tent. On my way. Okay, but Martinez, tonight, team dinner, you're there, not optional. He walked away before she could argue. The medical tent was busy. Corporal Vance was in surgery. 3 other SEALs were being treated for minor wounds. Shrapnel, cuts from the rocks, nothing life-threatening. A medic named Chen examined Riley's prosthetic. This needs a full replacement. The socket's completely compromised. How long? For a temporary fix, 2 hours for a proper replacement. We'll have to order one from Germany, maybe a week. Do the temporary fix. Chen nodded. This is going to hurt. It already hurts. He worked quickly, removed the prosthetic, cleaned the wounds where the broken socket had cut into her skin, applied antibiotic gel and bandages. While he worked, Riley watched the other patients. Young men who'd been shooting at death 8 hours ago and were now joking with the medics. Resilient in the way only soldiers can be. Corporal Vance came out of surgery at 1100 hours. The doctor said he'd keep his leg. Full recovery expected in 6 months. Riley visited him in recovery. He was groggy from anesthesia but conscious. Captain Martinez, he mumbled, they told me you carried me out. You're not that heavy. You saved my life. Riley shook her head. You saved your own life. You stayed conscious, kept pressure on the wound. All I did was tighten the tourniquet. Still, thank you. She stayed for a few minutes, made small talk, then left him to rest. That evening, she limped toward the SEAL team's unofficial gathering area, a patch of dirt behind the operations tent where they'd set up camp chairs and a portable speaker. The whole team was there, 12 men who'd survived an ambush that should have killed them all. They stood when she approached. Briggs raised a bottle of near beer. Gentlemen, I give you Captain Riley Martinez, Overwatch, sniper, and the baddest contractor in the entire theater of operations. They cheered, raised their own bottles. Riley felt her face flush. I was just doing my job. Bullshit, one of the SEALs said, a massive man with a beard and a grin. You saved our asses, own it. Another SEAL stepped forward, handed her something, a small wooden box. We wanted you to have this, he said. Riley opened it. Inside was a combat knife, custom made, the blade engraved with coordinates. She recognized them immediately. The valley, the ambush site. Below the coordinates, a single line, 1 shooter, 12 saved. Her throat tightened. I don't know what to say. Say you'll drink with us, Briggs said. Say you'll remember that you're not alone anymore. Riley looked at the faces around her. Men who'd seen her as an outsider 24 hours ago, who saw her differently now. Not because she was a woman, not because she was a contractor. Because she'd proven what mattered in combat: skill, courage, and the willingness to act when action was needed. "I'll remember," she said quietly. They drank together as the sun set, told stories, laughed at things that weren't funny but felt funny in the strange way trauma turns humor dark. At some point, Briggs sat beside her. "You know," he said, "I almost didn't give you that authority, almost told you to stay in position no matter what." "Why didn't you?" "Something in your eyes, during the briefing. You looked at that valley the way my grandfather used to look at storms, like you could see things other people couldn't." Riley thought about that, about instinct, about the accumulated weight of experience that lets you see patterns before they fully form. "My first deployment," she said, "I ignored my instincts, trusted the intelligence brief instead. 4 guys died. I promised myself I'd never make that mistake again." "Did you know them, the 4 guys?" "One of them was my best friend." She paused. "His name was Danny. We went through basic together. He was supposed to be best man at my wedding." "I'm sorry." "Me too." She looked at the mountains silhouetted against the darkening sky. "But I think he'd be glad I learned from it. Glad I didn't let anyone else die the same way." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the team tell stories, listening to the distant sound of helicopters taking off for night missions. Finally Briggs said, "The colonel who debriefed you, he's putting you up for a commendation. Silver Star, probably." Riley's head snapped around. "What?" "Extraordinary heroism in the face of enemy fire. That's the criteria. You definitely meet it." "I'm not even active duty anymore." "Doesn't matter. You were operating under military authority during combat operations. That makes you eligible." Riley didn't know what to say. Medals had never mattered to her. She'd been decorated before: Bronze Star, Army Commendation with Valor. They sat in a box somewhere back home. She'd never framed them, never displayed them. They were just metal and ribbon. They didn't bring back the dead, didn't change what happened. But maybe, she thought, they meant something to the people who survived because of what you did. "If I get it," she said, "I want Danny's family at the ceremony. I'll make sure of it." The night deepened. The team eventually drifted off to their bunks. Riley stayed behind, sitting in the darkness, thinking about the valley, about the shots she'd made, about Corporal Vance bleeding out between those rocks, about the voice on the radio screaming, "Save us." She'd saved them. 12 men who would have died if she'd followed orders, who would have died if she'd trusted the intelligence brief, who would have died if she'd stayed in her overwatch position like doctrine demanded. Sometimes, she realized, the rules are wrong. Sometimes the book doesn't have the answer. Sometimes you have to trust yourself even when everyone else doubts you. Especially when everyone else doubts you. Her prosthetic ached, her body ached, but her mind felt clearer than it had in months. She'd proven something on that mountain, not to the men, not to the officers, not to anyone else. She'd proven it to herself. What changes when people stop seeing you as broken and start seeing you as essential? The Silver Star ceremony happened 3 months later at Fort Bragg. Riley stood in dress uniform, prosthetic hidden beneath perfectly creased pants, watching as her parents sat in the front row beside Danny's family. The base commander read the citation, summarized the ambush, described her actions in the dry, official language the military uses to describe moments that were anything but dry. For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy. Riley's mind drifted, back to the mountain, back to the scope, back to the moment she'd made the decision to leave her position. The commander pinned the medal to her chest, shook her hand, said something about honor and courage. She smiled, said thank you, played the role expected of her. But inside, she was thinking about something else entirely. After the ceremony, Danny's mother approached her. Mrs. Chen was small, Vietnamese American, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had cried too many tears. "Riley," she said softly, "may I speak with you?" They walked to a quiet corner of the parade ground. Mrs. Chen took Riley's hands. "Danny used to talk about you, about how good you were with a rifle, about how you could see things other people missed." He was exaggerating. No, Mrs. Chen's grip tightened. He knew. He always said you were the best shot he'd ever seen. He said if he ever got into trouble, he'd want you watching his back. Riley's throat constricted. "I wasn't there for him when he needed me." "You were following orders just like he was." Mrs. Chen's eyes glistened. "But you learned from it. You saved those men because you remembered what happened to my Danny. You made his death mean something." Riley had spent 2 years carrying guilt, 2 years replaying that mission, 2 years wondering if she could have done something different. Maybe, she thought, it was time to put that weight down. "Thank you," she whispered. Mrs. Chen hugged her. "Make him proud, Riley. Keep saving people." The reception after the ceremony was awkward. Riley didn't like being the center of attention, didn't like making small talk with generals and politicians. She was relieved when Briggs found her on the edge of the crowd. "Hiding?" he asked. "Strategically repositioning." He laughed. "Got a minute?" They walked to a quieter area. Briggs pulled out his phone, showed her a photograph. 12 men in combat gear, dirty, exhausted, grinning at the camera. "That's my team," Briggs said. "Taken 2 weeks after the ambush. We're all there because of you." Riley studied the faces, recognized some of them from that night in Afghanistan. "They don't need to thank me." "They're not thanking you, they're asking you something." Briggs swiped to the next image, a document, official letterhead. "What is this?" "Job offer, full-time position with Naval Special Warfare. You'd be training snipers, teaching Overwatch doctrine, helping develop new protocols based on your experience." Riley stared at the document, read it twice. "Why me?" "Because you're the best at what you do, and because you understand something most people don't. Sometimes the mission plan is wrong and you need someone smart enough to know when to deviate." "I'm not active duty." "This isn't an active duty position. It's civilian contractor. Good pay, better benefits than what you've got now, and you'd be teaching the next generation of snipers to think like you do." Riley thought about that, about teaching, about passing on what she'd learned in blood and loss. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need. The offer stands as long as you want it." 2 weeks later, Riley stood on a shooting range in North Carolina. In front of her, 20 students lay prone behind rifles. 19 men, 1 woman. The woman was struggling, missing targets, getting frustrated. Riley walked over, knelt beside her. "What's wrong?" "I can't hit anything. The wind keeps pushing my shots." "Stop fighting the wind, work with it." "I don't understand." Riley pointed at the heat mirage rising from the valley. "See how the air bends? That's showing you the wind direction. Watch the grass. See how it moves? That tells you wind speed. Don't guess. Read the signs, then wait for your moment." The student settled behind her rifle, watched, waited. Fired. The target pinged at 900 yards. "I did it." "Now do it 9 more times. Consistency is what matters." Riley moved among the students, offering corrections, building confidence, teaching them that excellence wasn't about strength or aggression. It was about patience, precision, and the willingness to learn. At the end of the day, Briggs approached her. "How'd it go?" "Good, they're learning." "The woman, she gonna make it." Riley thought about that, about the determination she'd seen in the students' eyes, the frustration, the refusal to quit. "Yeah," she said, "she'll make it. She just needs someone to believe in her. Briggs smiled. Sounds familiar. That night Riley sat in her small apartment off base. The silver star sat on her dresser in its presentation case. She'd taken it out once to look at it, then put it away. Medals weren't why she did this. They never had been. She opened her laptop, started writing a training manual. Everything she'd learned about mountain warfare, about reading terrain, about trusting instinct over intelligence. The words came easily, page after page of hard-won knowledge. She titled it, Lessons from the Mountain. In the dedication, she wrote, "For Danny Chen, who taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to act despite it, and for all the warriors who will carry these lessons forward." The words felt right, felt true. She wrote late into the night, translating experience into wisdom, turning pain into something useful. Outside her window, the North Carolina darkness spread out like black velvet. Somewhere out there, soldiers were training, preparing for missions they couldn't predict. Some of them would face moments like she had. Moments when the plan was wrong and the intelligence was bad, and everything depended on one person making the right decision. Maybe her manual would help them. Maybe the students she trained would remember her lessons when it mattered most. Maybe Danny's death would continue to mean something long after she was gone. Riley kept writing. The grief was still there. The guilt hadn't disappeared completely. But she'd found something else, something that felt like purpose. She was building instead of destroying, teaching instead of fighting, creating a legacy that would outlast her. And for the first time in 2 years, she felt something close to peace. Can you ever truly leave the mountain, or does part of you always remain? Riley's phone rang at 300 hours, unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Martinez. Captain Martinez, this is Colonel Reeves, JSOC. We have a situation. She sat up immediately, wide awake. Go ahead, sir. There's a SEAL team pinned down in Yemen. Similar circumstances to your Afghanistan operation. Command wants your assessment. How fast can you get to MacDill? 6 hours. Make it 5. She was on the road in 20 minutes. By 800, she was walking into the JSOC Operations Center at MacDill Air Force Base. The briefing room was packed. Generals, intelligence analysts, special operations planners, all staring at a digital map of a valley in Yemen that looked eerily similar to Afghanistan. Colonel Reeves gestured to an empty chair. Captain Martinez, thank you for coming. She sat, studied the map, felt her instincts activate immediately. The team went in 4 hours ago, Reeves explained. Intelligence said light resistance. They walked into a prepared ambush. 6 wounded, can't extract under current fire conditions. Riley leaned forward, traced the terrain with her finger. This ridgeline here, that's where the enemy fire is coming from. 3 positions, north, east, and south. And your overwatch. 2 contractors, both inexperienced. They're doing their best, but they can't handle this level of complexity. Riley nodded slowly. She knew what was coming next. You want me to go in? We want you to assess whether it's feasible, whether one experienced sniper could make a difference. She studied the map for another minute, calculated distances, wind patterns, approach routes. It's feasible, but barely. The shooter would need to reposition multiple times, engage from at least 3 different locations, and they'd be working alone with no support. Could you do it? Riley met Reeves's eyes. Yes. Then we'd like you to volunteer. There was that word, volunteer, the Army's favorite euphemism for we need you to do something insane and we don't want to order you. She thought about her students, the training manual she was writing, the life she'd built away from mountains and bullets. Then she thought about 6 wounded men pinned down in a valley, about someone's Corporal Vance bleeding out while waiting for help. When do I leave? 6 hours later, she was on a C-17 heading toward a forward operating base in Djibouti. The loadmaster gave her a corner to catch some sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. She checked her gear instead. New prosthetic reinforced socket, her rifle cleaned and calibrated, 6 magazines, 300 rounds. More than enough for what needed to be done, or not enough at all. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. Captain Martinez, we're 30 minutes out. Weather's deteriorating. It's going to be a rough landing. Copy. She closed her eyes, tried to quiet her mind, but memories kept surfacing. Danny bleeding out in that village. Corporal Vance trapped between the rocks. The voice on the radio, save us. She'd spent 3 months teaching others. Now she was back in the fight. Maybe she thought this was who she really was, not the teacher, not the trainer, the person who went to the mountain when nobody else could. The C-17 landed hard. Riley grabbed her gear and stepped out into the African heat. A young lieutenant waited on the tarmac. Captain Martinez, I'm your liaison. We've got a bird standing by to take you to the insertion point. What's the current situation? Unchanged. 6 wounded, multiple enemy positions. Command is holding off on extraction until you clear a path. They walked to the waiting helicopter, an MH-60 Black Hawk with door gunners already in position. Riley climbed aboard. The helicopter lifted off immediately, banking east toward the coast. The flight took 90 minutes. Riley spent the time studying maps, checking wind forecasts, memorizing terrain features. The pilot's voice crackled through her headset. Captain, we're approaching the drop zone. Be advised, we're taking some small arms fire from the ridgeline. How close can you get me? Half-mile from target area. Any closer and we risk getting shot down. Do it. The helicopter descended fast, flared hard. Riley jumped before the skids touched ground. She hit the dirt running. The helicopter was gone in seconds, racing back toward safety. Riley was alone. She moved through the terrain like water, every step calculated, every movement deliberate. The enemy positions were 2 miles ahead. The pinned SEAL team was just beyond that. She could hear the gunfire now, the distinctive crack of AK-47s, the heavier thump of American rifles returning fire. Riley found her first position, a rock outcropping with clear sightlines to the northern ridge. She set up quickly, range targets adjusted for wind. Through her scope, she counted 7 hostiles on the northern position, all armed, all firing down at the Americans. She keyed her radio. Dagger 2, this is Ghost. I'm in position. Prepare to move on my signal. Ghost Dagger 2, Roger standing by. Riley centered the crosshairs on the first target, a man firing an RPK machine gun, the gun that was doing the most damage. She took the shot. The machine gunner dropped. Immediately she shifted to the second target, fired. Third target fired. The northern position went chaotic, men scrambling for cover, not sure where the shots were coming from. Dagger 2 moved now. She watched through the scope as the SEAL team broke from cover, moved 50 yards toward better position. But the eastern ridge opened up, fresh gunfire tearing into the Americans. Riley grabbed her gear, moved, ran 300 yards to a new position. Set up, ranged the eastern ridge. Engaged. 4 shots, 4 targets down. The remaining hostiles on the eastern ridge retreated, pulled back behind the ridgeline where she couldn't see them. Riley moved again, circled south, found a position that gave her an angle on the southern ridge. 5 hostiles, dug in behind sandbags, protected position, difficult shot. She took her time, calculated every variable, wind, distance, elevation. Fired. Missed the round, hit 6 inches left. She adjusted, fired again. Hit. The other hostiles realized they were under attack, started firing in her direction. Rounds cracked past her head, chipped the rocks near her position. Riley stayed calm, returned fire methodical, precise. 3 more targets down. The last hostile broke, ran. She let him go. The valley went quiet. Riley keyed her radio. Dagger 2 Ghost, all positions neutralized, extract when ready. Ghost Dagger 2, we're moving, thank you. She stayed in position, watched as the SEAL team loaded their wounded into the extraction helicopter, watched as the bird lifted off and disappeared toward safety. Only then did she move. The extraction helicopter returned 20 minutes later, landed 50 yards from her position. Riley climbed aboard. The crew chief gave her a thumbs up. "Hell of a job, ma'am." She nodded, too tired to speak. The helicopter banked toward home. Riley leaned against the bulkhead, closed her eyes. Her body ached. Her prosthetic was screaming. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline crash. But 6 men were alive. 6 men who'd been pinned down with no way out. The voice came back to her. That desperate cry on the radio 3 months ago. "Save us." She had again. Maybe that was her purpose. Maybe that's what the mountain had taught her. Some people teach, some people build, some people create. And some people go to the mountain when nobody else can. What do you do when the mountain calls you back, but you've already promised yourself you're done? The debriefing at MacDill lasted 2 hours. Riley answered questions, described her shots, explained her tactical decisions. Colonel Reeves listened without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "That's the 2nd time you've saved a SEAL team from an impossible situation." "Just doing the job, sir." "There's talk of bringing you on permanently. Full-time position with JSOC, direct action missions, counterterrorism operations, the works." Riley felt something clench in her chest. "With respect, sir, I already have a job, training the next generation." "I understand, but there aren't many people who can do what you do. Hell, there might not be anyone else who can do what you do." She thought about that, about being the best at something, about whether that created an obligation. "I appreciate the offer," she said carefully, "but I think I'm more valuable as a trainer than as an operator." Reeves nodded slowly. "I can respect that, but the offer stands if you ever change your mind." Riley flew back to North Carolina the next morning. By afternoon, she was back on the range with her students. They noticed something different about her. She was quieter, more distant. The female student, Lieutenant Sarah Chen, no relation to Danny, approached her after class. "Captain, are you okay?" Riley forced a smile. "Just tired, rough couple of days. We heard rumors about Yemen, about what you did. Don't believe everything you hear. Was it true? Did you really save a whole SEAL team by yourself?" Riley looked at the young woman, saw herself 10 years ago, eager, determined, wanting to prove she was good enough. "Listen," Riley said, "this job isn't about being a hero. It's not about collecting stories or building a reputation. It's about being so good at what you do that when someone needs help, you can provide it. That's all." "But you saved them." "I did my job, same as you're learning to do." Chen hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead." "Do you miss it, combat operations?" Riley thought about that question, really thought about it. "Sometimes," she admitted. "There's a clarity in combat, everything is simple, you see the problem, you solve the problem, you save lives. But teaching is more important. Every student I train might save dozens of lives over their career. My impact as a teacher is exponentially greater than my impact as a shooter." Chen nodded. "That makes sense, but it must be hard, knowing you could still be out there." Riley smiled. "The hardest part of being good at something dangerous is knowing when to stop doing it." That night, Riley sat in her apartment staring at her phone. She'd received a message from Briggs. Heard about Yemen. You're something else, Martinez. We're all grateful. She typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally settled on, just doing what you trained me to do, take care of your people. She hit send. Her laptop sat open on the desk. The training manual was nearly complete, 200 pages of hard-won knowledge, everything she'd learned about mountain warfare, sniper operations, tactical decision-making. She read through it, made small edits, added a final chapter about knowing when to trust your instincts over orders. In the epilogue she wrote, "Combat is chaos, plans fail, intelligence is wrong, technology malfunctions. In those moments all you have is training, experience, and the courage to act when action is needed. But here's what I've learned. The real courage isn't in pulling the trigger. The real courage is in preparing so thoroughly that when the moment comes, you don't have to think. You just act. Train harder than you think necessary. Practice until the skills become instinct. Study until you can read terrain like a language. And when the moment comes, when someone's life depends on you, trust yourself." The mountain teaches clarity. It strips away everything except what matters: the wind, the target, the shot. May you never need these lessons, but if you do, may they keep you and your team alive. She saved the document, attached it to an email, sent it to the Naval Special Warfare Publishing Office. Then she closed her laptop and went to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. Her mind kept returning to Yemen, to the shots she'd made, to the 6 men who'd lived because of her skill. Part of her wanted to be back there. Part of her craved that clarity, that simplicity. But a larger part understood that her real work was here, teaching, building, creating a legacy that would outlast her. At 200 hours, her phone rang again. Unknown number, again. She almost didn't answer, almost sent it to voicemail. But something made her pick up. "Martinez. Captain Martinez, this is General Morrison, JSOC. I apologize for calling at this hour." Riley sat up. "Go ahead, sir. I've read your after-action report from Yemen. I've also read every report from your previous deployments, and I've been reviewing your training manual." She waited. "You're refusing our operational offers because you believe training is more important than operations." "Yes, sir." "What if I told you we need both?" "I'm not sure I follow, sir." "We want to create a new position, advanced tactical advisor. You'd split your time, 50% training the next generation, 50% operational deployments when your specific skill set is needed." Riley's heart rate increased. "Sir, with respect. Before you say no, hear me out. You're right that teaching is important, but you're also one of maybe 5 people in the world who can handle certain situations. Yemen proved that. Afghanistan proved that. We need your skills in the field, but we also need you passing those skills to others. I'm not sure I can do both effectively." "I think you can, and more importantly, I think you want to." Riley didn't answer because he was right. She wanted both, wanted the clarity of the mountain and the satisfaction of teaching, wanted to save lives directly and indirectly. "If I agree," she said slowly, "I want full tactical authority on operations. No interference from command if I need to make decisions in the field." "Agreed. And I want my students protected. If I'm deployed, someone competent takes over their training." "Already arranged. And one more thing. Every after-action report I write becomes part of the curriculum. My operational experience feeds directly into what I teach." "That's exactly what we're hopping for." Riley took a deep breath, let it out slowly. "Then I accept." "Excellent. Welcome to JSOC, Captain Martinez, officially this time." The call ended. Riley sat in the darkness, processing what she'd just agreed to. She'd spent months trying to leave the mountain, trying to build a life away from combat. But maybe that was never the point. Maybe the point was learning when to go to the mountain and when to stay in the valley, when to teach and when to act. The mountain had taught her clarity. Now she'd use that clarity to prepare others. And when they needed her, when the situation demanded her specific skills, she'd go back. Not because she wanted to, but because she could. Because she had the skills and the experience and the courage to do what others couldn't. She looked at the silver star on her dresser, at the combat knife from the SEAL team, at the training manual on her laptop. All of it was connected. All of it was part of the same mission. Saving lives, teaching others to save lives, being there when it mattered most. The mountain would always be part of her, but she didn't have to live there anymore. She could visit when needed, and return home when the work was done. Sometimes, she realized, dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what you're best at, until the moment comes when the world needs you to do it one more time. That moment would come again. She knew that now. And when it did, she'd be ready.